Welcome to the Learn to RV podcast, where we support, inspire, and empower you 1 mile at a time.
So, welcome to Learn to RV. I'm here today with Shane Boyd. He has a group called the Gathering of Nomads. So, if you're looking for a way to connect that's more of a Christian based ministry, that's exactly what he has. But I want to talk about the heart behind Gathering of Nomads. And so, I want to start with how you ended up getting on the road, Shane.
Well, thank you for allowing us to come on here and share our heart. The kind of short version of this is I was a pastor in the traditional church model for a little over 10 years. And what ended up happening is we ended up buying this RV that we're in right now to get closer to the church I was pastoring. And
Oh,
it was in a city that was a little more expensive. And so we had a home that was about 35 minutes away from the church. And we said, hey, we could sell that. We could buy an RV. We'll have plenty of money left over and we'll be good. And so we ended up renting a piece of property that was just about 10 minutes from the church and parking the RV on there. And my wife and I, we've loved to camp. We love to RV. And we went on the road and during the week, and then we'd come back home, pastoring the church on the weekend, as typical church happens on Saturdays or Sundays, right? And anyways, we fell in love with this community. We started asking people like, "Hey, where do you do church, or where do you get kind of like your spiritual, filling?" And the question pretty much came to, we don't really have that. It's hard to go into a new church when you are going to a new city for just a few weeks or maybe only a month. You don't want to get plugged in and then all of a sudden, pull roots. And so we're like, hey, we got to figure out how we can maybe do some more ministry in the full-time RV world. And that's kind of what started us into like traveling and then where this ministry even is right now.
well, and that's so much of our story too. So our first year on the road, our plan was to go on and do full-time ministry. Frank had just finished his degree in biblical studies, and
Yeah.
so we were going to do exactly what you're talking about, but it didn't work out that way. And we'd go into church after church, and when they first met us, they were really excited because we'd walk in with 6 kids, and they were like, "Oh, we're going to add to our numbers." But then when they found out we were travelers, it was kind of reluctance, nervousness. And so we felt a lot of that our first year on the road. So we pulled out of going to church on a regular basis and often just catch something online now. And
Yeah.
and it's very much because of that. And I think that so many people struggle with that on the road. So it's really neat to see that you got behind them. But so that was your inspiration for the Gathering of Nomads. What point did you know that this was something bigger?
Oh man, I that's a great question. When we first started, my wife and I, we didn't Gathering Nomads didn't have a name. We had no idea what we were going to be doing. We just knew we wanted to go love people where they were and whatever campground we were parked in. And our biggest thing that we thought was lacking was community, and we were quickly met with the opposite of that. Community thrives in I would say within the full time RV world, but the presence of God was kind of lacking, if that makes sense. Like there's a lot of people that were meeting and gathering, and they had the commonality of traveling,
Yeah,
and so my wife and I just started asking, like, all right, typical church planter. That's me. I'm a pastor, church planter guy. Like, we're going to go plant churches, start new churches in new areas. And I said, you can't plant a church in a world that everyone moves. Like, there's no zip code that's consistent. And then it brought in this conversation of like, well, clearly we can't do all the ministry. We can't even be an online ministry where we're the talking head and we have a digital presence. There's too many other options for that out there. And we don't want to build an empire. We want people to have like faith-based community. So we quickly started having the conversation of, all right, what does it look like to train and send people so that way they can be the church, so they can do it too, and we can still be a part of this collective. We can still be part of the gathering of nomads. Again, we didn't have a name for it then, but we just figured, hey, let's have other people, let's meet other people that want to do it. Then we can join together. And while you're parked in Minnesota or you're in TTO and I'm all the way out west, we can be hosting church services, Bible studies, gatherings, and fellowships all in the name of the Lord. And we can do it wherever we're parked. And that tangible in person community starts to develop and grow. And so
for
that's
sure.
kind of where it started, right? That's where it was. We are like, all right, we got to figure out how we can do this. And we didn't know what we were doing. And so 3 months into it, we said, hey, let's just try to find a few other people that are interested in doing this and let's see what God does. And that was 3.5 years ago. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
So, what do you think people are really searching for when they're looking for Gathering of Nomads? Or are they even looking for you yet?
It's a good question. I think people are, a lot we've met a lot of believers on the road, people that are, I would say, they're Christian hangarounds, they've been a part of the Christian church, but now not sure where they fit in their faith department, and it just feels like they're spiritual. So a lot of people are still seeking, I would say, what we understand is the truth. And when we go through the Bible, we talk a lot about like this is what we understand Jesus is, the way, the truth, the life. And I won't get into preaching or sharing too much, but I will always share my faith at least the fundamental level. And I'll say, like Jesus has radically restored me, healed me, saved my life in so many different ways, and physical healing, spiritual healing, mental healing, like crazy things that I could never ever explain. And a lot of people are just looking for that. Life gives so much adventure, like being able to go new places. Your home is on wheels. You get to, talking to Jennifer earlier, and she, being at TTO, like, or being in Orlando or being in Florida, it's the place I love to be, but it's really busy. And now I'm out west, and so we're in opposite ends of the world right now. And I would go, man, I wish we could switch spots for a minute. But I would say
Yeah.
this: what's great, it's what's great is that you have permission to actually travel where you want. And in that same way, that means you're kind of searching for the new and exciting things. And what we never want people to find is that this is the new and exciting thing. God is the new and exciting thing. He has perfect and amazing plans for you. And so a lot of people are searching for things that are outside of what God is. And what God actually has to offer is a full life. Scripture says that He has come to give life and life to the full. And so, life to the full, whether you're in an RV or whether you're traveling or whether you're stationary or whether you're going overseas and moving around the world, I will say, it doesn't really matter what you're looking for there. God has something far greater. And why not bring God into your adventures and just make it look so much better and so much grander? And so, anyways, I say all that as like that's what our experience has been. And a lot of people have said, I didn't know what I was missing until I met God. I didn't know what I was missing until I had a faith-based community that prayed for me on travel days. When things got hard, we found out a family member passed away. I knew where I could go for prayer, support, and encouragement.
For sure. And I mean, I just recently, I'm part of the Gathering of Nomads in terms of, being in the Facebook group.
Yeah.
And I just had a friend that recently had her husband pass away. And that was one of the first places I went because I knew it was a safe space to say, can you pray for my friend? And, Frank and I have a background in, Christianity, and we got saved when I was, I don't know, 23. And I mean, I turned my life completely over to God, and we raised our 7 kids in the church. But when we got on the road, I think it all shifted. And so our
Mm,
kids are all over the place when it comes to, what they believe and how they believe. And some of that is largely because of Christians they encountered that weren't Christian like, if that makes
mm.
sense.
Yeah.
And so, we just love them through it and keep praying that they'll come back, if that makes sense. So, getting further connected might be a good thing for us too.
Mhm.
Let's talk a little bit more about faith and connection, because that's kind of your heart. It's also my heart. With Learn to RV, when I bought it from Doug last year, I feel like there's gaps in this community, and those gaps are, and we don't come together enough. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
That's
Like,
right.
I feel like we're too competitive. And so, what I would love to see is like Learn to RV and Gathering of Nomads host stuff at TTO this winter in
Mm,
conjunction with each other. And so, I think that we could build something much more beautiful than exists already in our existing communities today. But, that spiritual connection, what are some ways that you would say build those relationships? Obviously, prayer and community, but how do
yeah.
we make that happen?
Yeah, it's I think the greatest thing that we have available to us in this community within not just Gathering of Nomads, but just the full time RV world is we know what it takes to ask questions to build a new friendship. Walking by somebody's campsite, how fast and easy it is just to say hello and basically strike up a conversation, invite somebody over for dinner. We have I'm going to call it a model of our ministry that we call it's called the Bless model. It's super simple. It doesn't, I mean, if you want to be a blessing, I mean, everybody wants to be blessed and everybody wants to be a blessing. So we call it the Bless model because it just is simple. We didn't come up with this. It's just what we follow. We've adapted a little bit of things, but we've definitely adopted the entire thing, so it's an acronym. B just stands for begin with prayer. So begin with prayer. Like pray when you get into a campground. God, who do you have for me? Who do you want me to meet? Who do you want me to put it in front of? The next one is listen. Listen to what God might say to you, or what people are saying, what their interests are. There's a lot of people that just have similar interests, and let's go to the things that we agree on or have in common. You know what I mean? Like that's a great place to start. The E
Absolutely.
stands for eat, like have a meal together. There's nothing greater than breaking bread with somebody, having a meal, sitting down. The last one or the second, the first S is to serve, like serve people, help people. It's the greatest community. I've never seen so much help in my life. Like the way people are willing to help somebody because they're broken down or have a black tank issue or a flat tire issue or packing wheel bearings or a roof ceiling issue. Like someone always needs help with something, and this community comes in and helps. And so first S is serve. And then the last one is share your story. Like share what God has done in your life, share what you've struggled with in your faith, and let's see what God can do for just in that vulnerability. And that's kind of our method. And I would say that's like anybody can do that. Whether you're a believer, you're a non-believer, or you're a pre-believer, as one of my great friends says, like I love that. And like a lot, we believe that all people are always looking for God. And once in one way, shape, or another, they're trying to find who God is. And so the very long roundabout answer, I would simply say like try to follow those steps. Begin with prayer, listen to people, listen to what God is saying, eat with people, serve people, and then share your story and see what God does. Now, the more practical side of like, hey, how do you actually move forward? Like how do you actually do something with actually having some faith community? I will tell you, like, we developed an app and it's just a small app. It doesn't have like more than 500 users on it. But the idea is like, maybe go to a church. If you're not the one hosting, you're not the one who says, I'm going to invite people over to my campsite and I'm the gatherer. Maybe invite a couple people and say, hey, how do you feel about going to this church down the street with me on Sunday? And just go experience church together because that experience in the community aspect of it is still good. It's still fruitful. And
Yeah.
then you can come back and you can process that. You can talk about what happened at church. You can still do life together. But you ended up going to church instead of going to find community, you brought community with you. Or just bring people
That's a
in,
neat idea.
either way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So I guess so is it free to join the Gathering of Nomads or is there a cost to it?
It's $150 a year. No, I'm kidding. No, it's a completely free. We don't charge a dime.
Learned
Church.
RV's free too. So I mean,
Yeah.
like that, that
Sure.
is my heart. Is I think that
That's okay.
that community should be free for everybody.
That's right.
And I do think that God will provide if you believe that model.
That's right.
And it's crazy. Events can't be free, obviously, but the actual interest in the group, having that free is huge for so many people today, especially if they're struggling with finances. I remember when I joined full-time families, so I've been on the road 12 and a half years.
Yeah.
And so it was 2013. And Frank, we were just traveling on his retirement at the time. And so it was bare bones budget. We were eating beans and rice at the end of every month. And we took that $150 for that lifetime membership and said, we're not buying Christmas gifts for each other this year. We're going to be one of the first full time families. And
Yeah.
so, all of our membership perks have gone away over the years because,
Yeah.
things change, life changes. But,
Yep.
I think that having a free membership option is such a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, which leads me to my next question. Do you have to be a family that travels? So we're in our end stages of having kids on the road. My
Yep.
youngest will be 14 this year. And then I have a 16-year-old and a 19-year-old. Obviously, we're going to be at the point where we still want to be involved if we're still traveling, and I can't see us not. But does that mean that there's not a place for people like us?
No, not at all. I mean, we've got weekenders, we've got full timers, we've got people that are just seasonal, the snowbirds. You got people that are the opposite seasonal. They're stationary all summer long, or all winter long, and then summertime comes around and they are headed north, trying to get away from the heat. So the nomadic side of things, we called it Gathering Nomads because that's really all we're doing. We're gathering people that are living nomadically. And we have people that have come off the road, but we come through the town and they know that we're doing a Bible study or a gathering of some sort, and they're coming and hanging out. We had a rally in northern Michigan this year, and a family that's not even nomadic said, "Hey, we know what you guys are up to, and we're coming to that thing."
Oh,
And
that's cool because that's where I mean, we did a roof there with RV Roofing Solutions,
that's right. Yeah.
obviously, and
Yep.
so we stopped by, and it was just such a neat environment. It was the right number of families, if that makes sense to you. It's
Yep.
enough for it to be community centric without being overwhelming.
That's
I
right.
think once you get to a giant rally, you end up with spaces that can be overwhelming for people that maybe are a little more nervous.
Hmm.
But obviously can't just be you. So do you do
Yeah.
more than one rally a year?
As of right now, I mean, again, we're 3 years into this thing,
Yeah,
and we've done a few rallies. We've been focusing on one location. Our goal this year, for 2026 is to do 2, one in the Pacific Northwest, and then one also in the kind of the Michigan area. We don't want people to have to pick to choose, like, "I've gotta run all the way across the country to come to this larger gathering." But our focus is, similar to full-time families, similar to, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, similar to different organizations that we've said, "Hey, we really like a lot of the model and structure here. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I know that I stand on the shoulders of people that have gone way before me and have done things really well." And so we want to take what people have done well and try to take it and then mold it to what fits what we're trying to do, if that makes sense.
it
And we're
does.
not in competition. Like, I think you had said this earlier. We're not trying to compete with anybody. We want to serve the same community that More Ride is trying to serve, that Learn to RV is trying to serve, that full-time families is trying to serve. We all love this community, and we all want a place that we can meet people, we can travel with, we can have great experiences, we can learn from one another. We don't want a large cost involved to doing that. There's already a lot of cost just to fuel. We don't need more cost involved. And
Right.
so, our hope is that we have multiple miniature gatherings happening all the time. So that way it doesn't need to be the big event. The events, as they cost money. There's raffles and giveaways and lots of like planning and organizing. And some people love that, but there's a lot of people that said, I don't know if I can come to that. I'm a little nervous to go
Yeah.
around, 100 people. Now, that's only 25 families, but that's a lot of people that can be a little intimidating. And so we
Yeah.
like the kind of pop-up gatherings, the Bible studies, we'll talk more about that later, but there's a lot of us that are doing this now. And you can go find people that are just going to host a Bible study and a worship service and have a meal together and pray together. And we know that that is real, the real meat and potatoes are. The big events, they feel like good revival, and you feel what you walk away really, really empowered to go follow Jesus and actually live your life in your faith. But then it's like, what am I doing? I don't know if I have anybody. And it's those continuous little things that really feel like the meat and potatoes instead of the big buffet. You know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean. So, like, after 12 years on the road, my kids are sometimes standoffish the first time they meet someone because they don't know if they're ever going to see them again because the average family rolls off the road in 2.5 years.
That's
And
right.
so, if you're not intentional about meeting again and then again and again. I tell people a lot of times it's the third time you meet a family that you actually make a connection because your kids are now willing to step in and say, "Oh, I'm going to see this person again. I'm
Mhm.
going to do this with this family one more time." So, I think those are all really important factors. I think that, telling people to do it and then do it again and then do it again. If the first time doesn't feel right, it might not be the group that it's like anything, you're not going to be friends with everybody you meet. And
Yeah.
so sometimes even in the Christian circles, you're going to not meet somebody that jives with you, but try again. That's
Yeah.
all about what this lifestyle is about. So you've got space for anybody at that rate. So from families to solos to, couples that want to come in and partner with you.
Yep.
Um, how would you say, do you know what sowers is?
Like Sower's ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you say it's different than that?
Yeah, I think, our focus is on community. We love to serve and we love to do, like I always think of, if you haven't met Joe and Tara Myers, I love serve projects. I love that hands and feet are probably one of the greatest ways we can be moving in the right direction. That
Yeah.
the one thing that where we differ in that is our focus is really helping people be the hands and feet, not necessarily facilitating like a gathering, like
Right.
a big event or a serve project. That's where you're facilitating a lot of the organization and movement behind it. We want people to serve in everyday capacity, like serving the person that's parked right next to you, the retired couple that's having a hard time getting around. The person who's like, hey, clearly, there's something wrong with their RV, or there's something going on in their life, or they need some help picking up groceries. Like, let's bless them and serve them, because the micro really influences the macro. We teach that a lot in kind of on our ministry.
Absolutely.
And so, I will brag on this as like not something that I did, but as a cultivated conversation within Gathering of Nomads. And this would be like, I could see a pretty big contrast in this is we started this movement called Love Thy Nomad, which is part of Gathering of Nomads. And Love Thy Nomad is essentially the continuous rolling benevolence, which the church was, 1,000 years ago, right? They would call it a storehouse tithe. There was a place that money went into that bank And then when people had a need, they could call that bank and say, hey, basically life is falling apart and we need help. Well, that place that you gave to is the place that you could then pull from. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
now we don't live like that. Culture is very different. Society is very different. But we have a really awesome community that says, you know what? I want to give somewhere that I know it's going to go actually out and help somebody. So Love Thy Nomad is essentially that. It's a place where when there's benevolence needs, people can call, they can reach out. We can't always say yes because there's a lot of people asking more for help than people are giving into it. But
Yeah.
but I'll tell you, it's great the fact that we know people can say, you know what, I need some help. And this is a financial need. This isn't just a like, some like I got broken thing on my RV and they can't fix it. But some people they know how to fix it, but they can't afford the parts. Right? Or they lost their job and they can't even get home where they've got their support system. Well, then let's help get some gas money in their tank and get them home where they can get to their support system. That's what the church is supposed to be. Is not just a great talking piece, a great encouragement, but to also be hands and feet to actually do the work. And
Yeah.
so,
And
anyways, I
see,
say that, yeah,
you probably don't know this, but RV Roofing Solutions, when we came into owning it last year, we have an influencer program, but we also have a program just for people that can't afford a roof. And
come on,
obviously, their rig has to be in good condition. It can't be free, but I mean, it just has to pay my installer. So we have a
that's right.
program that if you know somebody that needs something like that, you can always send them my way and let me know that they're coming, because
Oh,
that's
that's
something
awesome.
that we do. And it's a big part of what we wanted for the company. We can't do it for everybody, but we do try to make it work, especially if there is a need like that where they can't afford something. Well, let's
Yeah.
talk about a little bit more about Gathering of Nomads. You talked about an app. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? Because I dug through and looked at it last night, and I didn't realize there was an app until yesterday.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. When it came down to like, I'll go down to the why. Like, why did we even create an app when we've already got Facebook groups, we've already got other things? We met a lot of people that wanted to go on the road to actually disconnect. I know a lot of social media influencers that social media is their way of life. It is where they keep in contact. They've built really great followings and communities by doing the influencer thing. And it's funny is that we started meeting people on the complete opposite side. Basically, no social media, no influencing, no nothing. We just want to go out and experience. We said, well, how do you stay connected? And they go, we're trying to text people, but we just don't know where they're at. We have no idea where people are, how do we connect again? And trying to share travel plans and calendars and different things. And it says like, well, how do we get people connected? So if you look at the app, you can go to gatheringofnomads.com. Right now, it's a web-based app. Some people love that. If you're an iPhone user, it's a little bit more difficult because it's not on the App Store yet. It costs a lot of money to develop apps, unfortunately. Um, but we met somebody who was a believer and full-time RVer, who runs an organization, and he essentially said, hey, I'd love to make that app. That's what, they've been on the road for like 6 or 7 years, and they said, we wish we had that when we were on the road. And I said, well, that's awesome. Let's do this. So we essentially developed it is we want to point people towards local churches that other nomads have gone to and recommend. So that was kind of the one thing is, hey, go find good faith community regardless and invite those people to go with you. You can actually create gatherings. So let's say you're hosting a card game night or a Bible study, or you're going on a hike or whatever. You can create your own event in there, plug that in there, and anybody that's local will either see it because it's geo-based, or you can actually have an invite link and send it to your people. And then the last one is that you can connect with the nomad. What we would understand is the chapters, and again, I think we'll talk about that in a minute. But like, you can actually connect with other people that are facilitating and leading, that have gone through training and are saying, you know what, I feel comfortable spiritually leading somebody in some way, shape, or form. And that was the idea behind it. What then kind of snowballed a little bit further is then you could just find other people that were near you. And so, similar to an app called Nomads Near Me, which we absolutely loved using, you could find nomads near you, but you didn't know if you had anything in common yet.
Right.
Like, you just knew that they lived nomadically. And I was like, I don't know if we should reach out. I don't know if we know each other there, or if we're going to like each other. And so this all kind of based around the fact that if you're on the app, most likely you're a believer, no matter where you're at in your walk with the Lord. Let's try to find some people that are like-minded and put them together. And what's been really cool is we've seen dozens of people meet each other on the app, use the app for gatherings, and there's not even a lot of people using it. So far, it's been a total home run, but there's not even like, we'd like to see, 5,000 to 6,000 people using that app. And right now, I think we have like 500 people using that app.
Well, that's a good start, you know,
Yeah,
and slow growth is still growth. So,
that's right.
RV Roofing Solutions is a nationwide RV roofing company with mobile installers.
One of the biggest factors and benefits of the RV Roofing Solutions system is our product is a low VOC, which is helpful for those who are sensitive to chemicals. It's better for the environment, and it actually works better for the RV roofing industry.
It's a great place to find a quality product.
www.rvroofingsolutions.com.
You know, let's talk about chapters for a minute. So chapters are something that, you know, you have some chapter leaders out there. What
Mhm.
does it take to be a chapter leader? And can you talk about chapters a little bit? What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, so for anyone who's listening that is familiar with church or church experience, the word church comes with expectation. First of all, it usually means a building or a location. Usually means there's a senior pastor. Usually means there's a worship team. There's kids ministry. There's evangelism outreach. There's a bunch of stuff that comes with this word church, right? And so we decided, hey, we are all representing the big C church, which is just God's kingdom. We're all representing this, right? And so let's not use a word that can really confuse people with expectations. So chapters are essentially people that are hosting and being the church, but they're not in a building. They're not at a specific location, and they're not going to be your worship pastor, your lead pastor, your children's pastor. There's no expectations that come with this, but likely they are doing what God has called them to, really within their gift mix. So they're probably leading Bible studies or doing cookouts and prayer meetings, and they're going to walk through and actually meet with you. A lot of people are just doing what we would understand as discipleship, which is, hey, we'd love for you to come sit around the fire. We just want to talk about scripture and walk through life together. And they're walking through that and they're owning their position in the church. So I don't know if that really fully answers the question, but we had to come up with a training. How do you say that this person is qualified, verified, at least even the fact that they should be the ones that do this? I've been a part of the church for so long. There's lots of people that want to do things that maybe need a little bit more time with the Lord or need a little bit more time to go to or just a little bit more exposure of what it means to lead someone closer to Jesus. And I'll say that because I was a pretty young, ambitious follower of Christ. And I'll tell you right now, there's probably some things that I misled people in because I was just saying what I was saying. I had no idea what I was saying. And so we want to make sure people know what they're saying and they've got firm beliefs in that. And we're not gatekeeping. Actually, we've been accused of quite the opposite. Is we want to open the floodgates. We want people to go and do what God has called them to and try to get as many barriers out of the way. But we have like biblical truths and foundations that we gotta stand on. And we want to make sure that if we're going to point towards people, we say, you know what, this is a person who's an example of how to follow Jesus. We're not saying they're the example of Jesus, but how to follow Jesus, right? And so it came down through, we take everybody through a 4 to 6 week training process of developing their role, their character, knowing their calling. And then we also have what we would understand as like a chapter agreement that this is what it looks like to live life above reproach. Those are kind of biblical terms, but we would say like these are some standards of living that if you're going to say, I'm a follower of Jesus and I'm going to help others do the same, that we want to make sure that you're also leading people closer to Jesus, not to your theology, not to your ways of life. And so it's got to be very simple, very basic, and very replicable. And in that middle, we call it high trust, low control. There's really good accountability. And we want people to go out and do what God has called them to do, but no, they still got a really good support system of spiritual leadership, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And, you know, when we first hit the road, I just in my feed actually had a picture of me writing to 250 churches because
Mm.
I wrote to these 250 churches. Frank had his degree. We were going to go out and do almost exactly what you're talking about. And one church out of 250 wrote back to me. And what they said to me was 100% heartbreaking is we don't need that in America. There's enough churches. And I was like, but the churches aren't going to the campgrounds. The
Yeah.
churches aren't participating that way.
Mm.
You know, and what you don't know is I'm working on something behind the scenes with Family RV Association. You know, there's a huge rebrand from FMCA to FRVA. So FRVA has some really great benefits. We're going to have a podcast about that in just a couple weeks coming up and talk about all of those things. So, you know, maybe that's a second conversation that we have somewhere down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about remote discipleship. Do you guys do any of that with people like one-on-one once you meet people?
Yeah, when we first started, remote discipleship, it was a pretty consistent conversation when people were like, "Hey, I I'm starting to learn how to follow Jesus, but now we're not in the same campground. And so how
Right.
do we stay connected?" And in the digital atmosphere, like, I mean, you're parked somewhere else, I'm parked somewhere else, and here we are doing a call, right? This is the
Yeah.
greatest thing ever that we can do this. The digital age has made it so convenient to stay connected. And a lot of people, like, I am not a fan of Zoom. COVID taught me something different. Like, you got to use it and you have to understand. So grateful to be able to use this kind of digital atmosphere. So remote discipleship kind of turned into a lot of people just saying, "Hey, I'm looking for continuous conversation discipleship." Right now, I think I disciple like 5 or 6 people. And pretty much any other chapter, when we meet someone else, I say Jesus had 12 disciples. He was 100% man and 100% God. And you probably shouldn't do 12. Okay, one of them
Right.
betrayed him, and so cut that number in half, stick with 5, let's see what happens. And essentially what we've encouraged people to do is if you need discipleship, we would love to get you plugged in with someone who's a chapter, someone who can walk through scripture with you, pray with you, sit with you in the hardest moments. And so that remote discipleship looks just like a relationship. We've defined discipleship as a very simple term, which is just this. And churches, we've had pushback on this, and I'm always welcome to it. I like to boil things down to the simplest point, and if you want to add on to it, go ahead. But the simplest point of discipleship is a friendship that points you closer to Jesus. That's all discipleship is. And so that could look like a really hardcore structure, going through scripture every single week. You could be meeting once a month. It could just be a phone call, checking in and praying with somebody, seeing how they're doing. All that equates as discipleship. But we think that should be consistent with 1 to 2 people and not this like, hey, let's try to disciple 150 people at a time. That's just training. That's not
Yeah.
discipleship.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about remote discipleship, we just say, hey, if you need someone to help you in your faith or walk alongside you, feel free to reach out. We'd love to get you plugged in and meet somebody else who's doing it too. We're not telling you that they're Jesus, but they're doing their best to follow. And I think they could probably help you do the same.
That's awesome. So, we met this summer. I mentioned that, but do you belong to other communities? Like, and are you a part of those nomadic communities?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we've been a part of full-time families. We got, I would say, a really good friend of ours is a part of full-time families. They said, "Hey, are you part of this?" And I said, I don't think so. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm on a Facebook group. Is that part of it? And they said, "You know what? Come and be a part of this. I'll pay for your membership for the first year just to see if it's worth it." And I think membership's like 60 or $70 or something like that for a year. And I said, "Hey, I'll try it out for that." And they're like, "No, we're going to pay for it." I was like, "Okay, then I'll try it out while you're paying for it." And I thought it was great because they had some structure that we couldn't implement, which was they had group chats for different campgrounds, and they had people managing it and making sure that they stayed pure and they weren't combative. And I said, "Oh, I like this." I said, "Can I drop Bible studies in there?" And they said, "Yeah, you could 100% drop Bible studies in there." And what we found is that, that organization, they even said like, "Hey, we're okay with that. And you keep doing what you're doing." And then we started meeting other people that are trying to run similar types of organizations or similar types of things. And it really came down to this, hey, I think we're a lot better together than we are trying to start separate things, but we understand the niches, right? That we are all kind of serving somebody
Yep.
different. And I live in a Grand Design RV, and I went to Grand Design RV rallies, and they said, "Hey, how do you keep going to all of them? We want you to show up everywhere and be the chaplain service for all of
We
them." And
have
I
that
said,
problem with the company. So I know.
I can't do that. I can't go to 500 rallies a year. And so, like, I was like, I would love to go there. That's a general cost, rallies, like you said, they cost money. But the idea here is that, like, we want to be a part of as much community that God opens the door to be a part of. But we know that what it requires is a lot of people to do it. And my wife and I, Sarah and I, we know that we can't be the people. Like, we don't aim to be the people, but we'd like to cultivate that within Gathering Nomads so that they can go and be the representing Jesus and the light of the world into every sub community everywhere. And if it's okay, I'll share this. Can I share something that's not necessarily fully
Absolutely.
RV? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what's really cool is this. So Gathering Nomads started because it was nomadic. And then we had chapters that were coming off the road and they're like, "Hey, can we still be a part of the thing if we're not chapters?" And I was like, "Well, but you're not really serving the nomadic world. I don't know how, like, you're a gathering of like a neighbor or something." And so then we started an organization called Gathering Neighbors. And you guys, that was a year and a half ago, and we have 25 house churches. And those are people that are meeting in barns, restaurants, gyms, coffee shops. Like they're just meeting everywhere. And it's the coolest thing ever. But it's the same kind of mentality of like, oh, so the gathering can just look different. But we are
Yeah,
going to gather people in unique circumstances. And one of my favorite things to work on is that. And we love seeing that because now people are doing brisket in Bible study and burgers in Bible study and whatever it is that they're doing. And it's just gathering and being a part of the community. And I think we can serve really any aspect of any community because Jesus calls us to go be salt and light, which changes the environment when you come into contact with it. So we should go into different environments. And we encourage
absolutely.
people to go do that.
That's cool. So I have two invitations for you at that point. So, and
Cool.
you can say no, but Learn to RV has a community page. I would love to be able to put Gathering of Nomads up on there, your Facebook group with a picture of whatever you want that to look like, so that people can find you. Learn to RV is not just Christian based, but
Yeah,
yours is, and we like supporting all communities. If you
that's right.
go there, you'll find that Full Time Families is listed, Republic of Nomads is listed, FRVA is listed, Escapees is listed. So we want to be a good representation across the board for Learn to RV for people to find where they fit and how to fit there.
Yeah.
Secondly, you have a podcast. And so I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about that podcast, but we also have a featured podcast page that I would love
Yep.
to invite you to let us list, one of your podcasts there with a link, obviously, on Learn to RV.
Yeah. I will say yes to both of those things. We love here's one of the things that I call it. I don't believe in cross contamination, but I do believe in cross pollination. And one of the greatest things that we can learn is from each other. And so, I would say like I don't know if I'm a part of all those Facebook groups, but I think I'm a part of most of those groups. And my favorite thing is like, hey, I want to know like if I'm going to meet anybody where they are, I want to go there. I don't want to like say, hey, you need to meet me where I'm at. I'm happy to be the guy that meets you where you're at. I think that's
Right.
a probably far better conversation to have anyway. Now, I don't want to compromise integrity and I don't want to step away from my beliefs or anything like that, but I'm happy to meet you where you are. That's the example that Jesus gives us all throughout scripture, actually, is that he meets people where they are and he's not scared to go into some really dark, scary places.
It's
So,
funny that you say that because our first year on the road, we were sitting around a campfire and we were always the family that got invited to the atheist campfire at the end of the season.
yeah,
And I would turn down my Christian friends and go
yeah,
because those people were just as important to me.
that's right.
It didn't matter if, and so one of my friends, Melly, came to me at the end of our first year in Florida and she said, thanks. I was like, for what? She goes, for never turning me into a project like all other
Mm,
Christians do. And
yeah.
so I think that as Christians, we have to be super mindful that we're actually engaging for the right reasons. And all of
Mm,
that is super important. But at the same time, never letting anyone feel like a project, whether they're a Christian or a non-believer, and
that's
just
right.
investing in people for all the right reasons. And that's what Jesus did. He didn't turn people into projects. I mean, Mary Magdalene could have been his biggest project, but she wasn't. She was
That's
just,
right. That's right.
but yeah. So
Yeah, I in the podcast episodes, it's a brand new podcast for us. The podcast title and name is called the Collective Thread Podcast, and the
oh, I
reason why
love
we
it.
didn't call it the Gathering of Nomads podcast or the Gathering of Neighbors podcast is that God is constantly weaving this thread of stories all throughout humanity, from the beginning of creation to the flood to the time of Moses to when Jesus shows up on the scene to his death and resurrection, the times of Paul, and then now where we are in our history today. Like it's a continuous story. We don't know God without all those stories. And the reality is that all of those are stories that God wrote in time and in life. So we want to try to do the same thing. We live in a digital age, and so we want to share testimonies of what God is doing. And so
Absolutely.
all of our podcast is really chapters that are sharing what God is doing in their midst in their life. Some of them are shy and don't want to get on and share, and so we try to do our best to share. We share anybody who wants to come on and share testimonies of what God is doing on their life. You don't even have to be a chapter, to be honest with you. We just want to share what God is doing continuously in the full-time RV world, in the even the neighbor world. We don't want to try to draw the lines in the sand where they don't exist. But the reality is that God is pretty consistent. Like Jennifer, I think just knowing your background and your beliefs, like you can see the consistency of how good God is. And
Oh,
he
absolutely.
loves consistent. Like he's been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
And so if we can look inside of time and we can look throughout scripture and we can see these things, let's continue to share what God is doing in today's day and today's age and go, we can always point back exactly who God is. He's the same yesterday, today, and will be forever.
That's awesome. So if
Yeah.
someone's listening today and wants to get involved, what's the first best step? To download the app, attend an event, something else, where would you point them to start with?
I would say the website. The website's probably going to be your number one thing, which is www.gatheringofnomads.com. You'll find the podcast on there. You can see some of the events and little gatherings that we have going around in the country. The bigger events are also on there. You can get involved. You can meet the chapters. Like you can see there's a whole page. You can just see all the chapters on there. And if you want to get in contact with them, you send an information button at the bottom and you can get plugged in with one of those chapters. You want to ask how to get involved or become a chapter, same exact process. That's kind of the way that I would flood in. But if you're a full-time RVer and you're like, hey, I don't want to do ministry, but I'd like to get plugged into community, I would go to the Gathering of Nomads Facebook group and get a chance to just introduce yourself. And you're going to get a bunch of people that want to say hi to you. They want to meet you. They want to know where you're parked. They're going to invite you to their park. They're going to try to get travel plans lined up. I mean, the community is absolutely wonderful. And that is not anything that I created. Those are just people who absolutely love God, and you can see the love of God in them. And so I would say those are probably your two best starting points. The podcast can be found on there. I think the Facebook group can be found on there. I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to double check that. But that would be probably your good starting point.
We'll put all those links in the show notes too, so they can easily access them from this episode. So that shouldn't be a problem. The other question I'd ask you is, do you have to be a Christian to join any of these groups?
Not at all. Absolutely not. When we look at, first of all, I wasn't raised in the church. Like I don't have Christian roots beyond my grandparents who probably prayed for me every single day, and I attribute their prayers to me knowing Jesus today. But I didn't grow up anywhere near it. And so my biggest thing is like, I would love if you're not a believer and you're like, I'm interested in this whole Christian thing, or I'm just interested, or maybe I'm skeptical. I mean, the church that I was saved at, I only went back to that church to prove them that they wanted me for my money. Like literally, I was going back to that church to be like, you guys are just money hungry and want me for my money. And come to find out, like they loved me. They loved me better than half my family and friends did. And I realized later on it was the love of God. And so if you have a love deficit anywhere in your life, in your parents, in your friends, in your siblings, in your relationship with your spouse, in your relationship with your kids, if you've got a love deficit in your life, God is the greatest place to start. I'll tell you right now, because he loves greater than no one else in the world. And the best way you'll find that is from the people that have experienced his love. And so if you're a non-believer, join the Facebook group and get yourself exposed to real love, genuine love, not judgment, not projects, not I'm going to fix you, not you need Jesus or else, but the fact that you need genuine love from people who actually know who God is.
Let's talk about the last thing I want to bring up is, well, actually two things, but if you were to describe the legacy you feel like you're building, what would you say that is?
Oh man, I don't know. That's a hard one. Jennifer, you're supposed to send me questions ahead of time. I don't know this one.
But see, that's why it's so authentic.
Yeah.
I want you to be honest with the people that are out here. I mean, I think that, there is a legacy in something like what you're building. Learn to RV had a legacy. When Doug and I sat around the campfire that night 2.5 years ago, and he said, I think I'm ready to give it up. It took 2.5 years for him to do that, for me to take it over, because I was like, I don't want some big brand to take this over. I want it to be somebody that has the heart for it. And
Yeah.
Shane, maybe that's you. Maybe that's your heart. If you're not here 10 years from now, what do you see, the group is becoming? And can anybody be
I mean,
the body of Christ?
Yeah. I mean, the quick answer, anytime I think about legacy, like I used to be a part of a church called Faith Legacy. We talked about legacy a lot. It comes down to just faith. I've created this organization with a lot of intentionality that it's not around me. I don't want people to think like, again, you go to a local church and that senior pastor sometimes is really protective over the pulpit. Like I'm the leader, I'm the head, I'm the ... And, scripture gives us a lot of pointing directions that God is the head and the rest of us are subservient to him. And I truly believe that. I live that pretty much every single day of my life. And, our organization is ran by the chapters. Like if I stepped away tomorrow, the ministry would continue. Because everything that's already in motion is already happening. And
Right.
we have somebody who leads the podcast that is not me. I've got a co-director and a co-founder where him and I make all those decisions together, so it can't just be me. And that's a biblical thing. If you read through Titus 1
Yep.
and 2, it'll tell you you're not supposed to have one leader, you're supposed to have multiple overseers. And so we live that out. We don't want to have just one head honcho like the corporate world says. We want to have multiple. And so if I wanted to leave a legacy, if that was even up to me, I would just say the fact that it is not a mantle that I pick up easily to go and share the name of Jesus and to go help people fall in love with God. It's the fact that all of us do it. And I would just love more people to say, you know what? That is not on pastoral leadership. That is on me. All of us are to go and be the body of Christ. All of us are to go be in light, to be the light of the world, not religious leaders. And I've got a big problem with religious leaders. And some people would even say that I am one. But I'll tell you, my biggest push against religious leaders is that they think they're the answer. And I don't want to be the answer. I want Jesus to be the answer.
That's a great way to look at it. Several years ago, back when we were still in a house, we worked for a guy that wrote a movie called To Save a Life, and I
Mm.
studied under Jim for 3 years. And one year, I was one of the people that would set things up in the ministry room. And so he comes in, he's got this kiddie pool one night, and he's got this, I don't know, 15 bags of oatmeal, and he goes, "Go put cold water in this and fill this up with oatmeal so it's gross." And I was like, "What are we doing?" And he goes, "Well, we're going to see what happens, but I can't tell you more than that because you're one of the leaders. And if I tell you, then you're going to have a heads up over everybody else." And so that night, he asked the kids that were going through stuff to walk through. We were primarily a teen ministry, and so he asked them to walk through the oatmeal. And then he encouraged the leaders to pray for the kids. And there were 3 leaders that walked through the oatmeal with them. All of the other leaders walked around the outside of the oatmeal. And I think that that's life. We talk about living it with people, but are you willing to really step in the gap, pray for people, be involved with people's lives, be intentional, set an alarm, don't forget to call so and so today.
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of, what we have to look at as believers. Are we going to be that type of Christian, or are we going to be just kind of a sideline player? That
Mm.
they're great too. Please don't misunderstand what I'm
No,
saying.
I
You need
understand.
those people on the sidelines praying, but
Yeah.
you sound like you're building the type of ministry that like is going to walk through it with people, and that you're finding leadership within that will also do that. So let's go to supporting the ministry of Gathering of Nomads. You are a 501c3, correct?
We are.
So
Yeah.
you don't have to be a nomadic family or a nomadic couple to support the ministry. Is there a way to give donations and stuff like that? Are those donations tax deductible? We are coming up on the end of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. We don't do this for money. We oftentimes neglect this conversation. According to Scripture, Jesus says, "Don't take any extra silver, don't take any extra gold, just go and do it." And we believe in that. We believe that part of being obedient isn't to say we've got to get a bunch of money to go do it. And so we've done this a lot with a very little amount of money. And I don't want to call that a pride factor, but we love the fact that I ran a traditional church with a pretty big budget, and it takes a lot of money when you got a building and you have a lot of staff and a lot of expenses. And so, yeah, if you want to support what we're doing, we have a lot of ambitions and goals to make more chapters, to help more people. We want to go international. We've got people from different countries reaching out and saying, "Hey, how do we become a chapter? And how do we do house church in different country?" And I'm like, "Well, I have to wake up at midnight to meet you in the morning. I don't know if I want to do that." So anyways, but it's a really fun problem to have. But if you want to support what Gathering of Nomads is doing, what Gathering of Neighbors is doing, kind of really as an entire collective, you can just go to gatheringofnomads.com. There's a support button there. All of the money that goes to that is all about advancing the gospel, to creating community, and then helping other people do the same thing. We try not to fundraise a bunch of financial support so that way we can go do extra things. This is all really focused on like ministry. The other thing is, I just want to say this because all the chapters that do ministry work, like if you go to the website and you can see a little blue icon on the bottom of their profile that says support us, every single chapter fundraises their support so they can do the ministry work. And most of them don't ask for support. They use their own money, their own resources, and they serve people, they feed people, they do tremendous ministries, they give Bibles away, they do a bunch of stuff out of their own dime. And so if you also want to support them, because I don't get a chance to brag on every single chapter enough, but if you want to support someone who's actually doing the tangible work like my wife and I are doing, you don't have to support just the entire network. You can say, you know what, I want to support one specific person, and pray through it, read through it, and you can support any of those guys on the website.
That is really fantastic. Well, I just want to say thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you.
It's always been, a great time to, sit down and talk to anybody in the RV community. But, I think that, this is a section of RV life that we often neglect when we're on the road. So I think, people knowing about it is a critical point. So I
Mm.
just wanted to say thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thank
So,
you for having me.
okay. And then all you have to do is subscribe, to the podcast for Learn to RV, the podcast, or pop by and see Shane's podcast. That is, one more time, where do you find that one? Just on the website?
Yep, gatheringnomads.com.
Okay. And you're on Spotify and Apple and all the places with the podcast as well?
Yep.
Awesome. We'll have to use that one for the next travel day.
Sounds good.
Good deal. Well, thanks, Shane. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
Help support the podcast by subscribing and telling a friend.